The shout went up from the scaffolding and died in the dust before anyone understood it. A mason asked for more mortar, and the boy at the ramp swore he heard a different word entirely, hard sounds he had never learned, a string of syllables that meant nothing. The foreman barked again, the boy tried to answer, and tools slipped out of hands as men realized their ears no longer matched their tongues. Buckets swung. Bricks toppled. What had been one voice along the lift and ledge broke into fragments, and the tall work on the plain of Shinar stuttered to a stop. They had come there together after the flood years, families moving east until the land spread flat and wide, and the earth gave up clay as if it had been waiting. The plain offered space for animals and grain, but it offered something else too, a place where a single plan could grow without a mountain or river to argue. They burned bricks until the kilns glowed and sealed them with bitumen. Stone and lime were rare. Clay and pitch obeyed easily. What they could not quarry, they made. The city rose from its own soil. They spoke one language and made one promise. "Come, let us build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens," the elders said, not whispering and not ashamed. "Let us make a name for ourselves, or we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." The words carried a memory they all knew, the ancient blessing that told humankind to fill the earth. Yet they chose to resist the distance it required. A city meant center. A tower meant proof. If they built high enough, no one would forget where they belonged. The plan looked simple in the dust. A square base, steady lifts, ramps curling upward like a road to the sky. Men pressed clay into molds, slid bricks into the mouth of the kiln, and stacked the fired blocks in neat rows that steamed in the morning cool. Others dredged bitumen from pits that stank of the deep, carried it in skins, and worked it into a paste that locked bricks together like grown bone. Record keepers scored tallies on clay with reed pens. Runners moved between teams, repeating orders that matched mouth to ear without any stumble. Work made the city feel inevitable. Kilns rumbled. Water carriers walked a groove into the soil. Children learned measures before they learned song. The tower climbed past the height of any wall they had known, and with every lift pride hardened. They praised their foresight, the strength of their hands, the cleverness that turned mud to stone. They praised the thing itself, a stair lifted into the blue where no stair had a right to be. From the fields, the tower looked like a spear. From the tower, the fields looked like a promise kept to themselves. Old stories tied that ground to a strong man named Nimrod, a mighty hunter whose first kingdom began at Babel and reached across Shinar. Whether he stood on the scaffolds that year or in another generation, his name lingered whenever people talked about power that gathered and bent other lives to its purpose. In the city, no one argued about names aloud. They only worked. The tower took faith in themselves and turned it into form, and the form demanded more faith. To stop would have felt like weakness. To continue felt like destiny. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the children of man had built. Nothing about that descent depended on distance, yet the words told a truth the builders refused to learn. No structure raised by human will could ever rise to God. He saw a single language turned into leverage, unity harvested for pride, and judged what would follow if that road ran unbroken. "Behold, they are one people," the judgment went, "and this is only the beginning of what they intended." Nothing they proposed would be withheld from them. The sentence landed with perfect measure. He would confuse their speech. It happened so quickly that men flinched as if struck. Words they had shaped since childhood slid sideways. A familiar command arrived new and wrong. The brick called brick a heartbeat before could no longer be named by both speaker and hearer. Men laughed in surprise at first, then shouted, then fell silent, and finally argued in sounds that made argument useless. A team tried to lift and set as always. The top course twisted by a finger's width and jammed the whole line. A runner raised his hands for calm and found his own voice foreign. Below, the kilns coughed and went quiet. Water boys waited for orders that never arrived. The bitumen crew spread paste that began to skin over while men on the ledge pointed and tried to pantomime the difference between now and next. The foreman, red-faced and desperate, pushed two teams together and discovered only one word still matched between them, their oldest name for mother, a sound that held, then broke as even that comfort tilted toward another meaning. Strangers stood 10 paces apart and could not ask each other for a cup of water. No whip solved it. No plan could be drawn in ritually simple gestures and passed up the slopes. People found one another by comprehension, little by little, grouping by words that still fit, and every group felt smaller than the old we. The elders met and tried to vote. They could not even agree on the question. A few men climbed to the last course and stared into the sky, as if the meaning they had wanted to catch would somehow drop back down like a lost tool. It did not. The work halted, and the city learned what a monument to a broken promise looked like. They named the place Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. On the plain, the tower stood unfinished, still taller than anything else, but mute in its meaning. A reminder of a day when unity had been turned toward defiance and then emptied of power by a single act. Families gathered their animals and tools, chose roads by river or ridge, and went out with words that matched the mouths in their tents. The very thing they had built to prevent, scattering, arrived anyway, without their consent, because their plan had demanded more than the truth allowed. The scattering did not look like punishment when seen from a high point with clear weather. It looked like the world becoming itself. Groups walked away and carried seed and craft and song, and each new speech carved a path of memory only that people could trace. The plains did not hoard us, they released us. The God who had blessed humankind to fill the earth had not changed. It was human fear of distance and loss that had changed, and the tower had been its symptom. When language broke, pride lost its ladder, and people learned to live without a single name that tried to hold everyone at once. Years passed, and travelers crossed the plain and pointed at the mound that still rose against the sky. Some said people later finished temples there for other kings, piling brick upon brick until their stories outgrew the old one. The memory under all those lifts never faded. A tower had gone up against the command to trust spread instead of center, and God had broken the gears they used to grind obedience into a monument for themselves. The ruin did not accuse technology, it accused the heart that used skill to deny the one who gave it. What remained most was the sound that filled the first hour after the confusion, men calling and finding only echoes that no longer answered. That sound marked a boundary stronger than stone. It meant a family would need to learn patience and trade to speak with a neighbor again. It meant power would have to flow through listening instead of only through command. It meant no single city could claim to be the measure of humanity, and no single tower could pretend to hold heaven like a captured flag. Long after the scaffolds rotted, the lesson stayed plain. Pride built fast and called itself safety. Obedience trusted what looked like risk and found life spread wider than one square of ground. On the day voices broke, the world did not end. It began to diversify on purpose, and every path away from Shinar carried a language that could become praise. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.